Hey everybody, it's Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here with a quick update on the tropics. Not a lot of change from yesterday. We're still watching a lot of activity out there, but nothing really getting its act together just yet. We've got three areas that we're watching right now. Yesterday we had basically two, but I talked about that other area coming off the coast of Africa. There's Invest 97, so that's area number one. There's area number two, and right in the corner of your screen behind my head there is area number three, which is just coming off the coast of Africa right now. We could show you all three of them here. You could see basically we've got, let me get that out of the way. You could see our first area has about an 80% chance of developing here, moving into the northwestern Caribbean. Probably the least organized, but eventually in this area there'll be something that we eventually see with that. The middle one is the one that has the most potential to develop here in the next couple of days. 90% probability here in the next 2 days. And I believe the hurricane hunters are going to go investigate that one here. Maybe either tomorrow or the day after. They'll probably go check out this first one first when they fly out of areas down in the Cayman Islands. So you can see our third area, lower chance, about 20-30%. The wave is just moving off the coast of Africa. So let's go back to the satellite imagery and I'll show you these close up. So here's our first wave. This is the one in the Caribbean, kind of an open wave. Doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot. I don't think that's going to do much here in the next couple of days. But when we look at the middle one, which is the one that has much more of a swirl to it, it just cannot get its thunderstorms to wrap completely around the center. That's why this has the highest probability of developing over the next couple of days. Let's take a look at those spaghetti plots. And you can see we're running those on these two systems. The first system, you could see moving to the northwest, and there's a pretty big spread here. And I'll talk more about this in a minute. We've got a pretty big trough digging in over the Gulf of Mexico. So if it survives, and that's a big if it gets to here, it's got two options. It's either going to go west and fall apart into Mexico or Belize, or it's going to get pulled and sucked up into this trough, which is digging down. And then that becomes a big rainmaker, potentially could develop it further. But I think the wind shear would keep that from developing much. It probably would become a huge rainmaker. And then here's our middle system. You can see the thing that makes me kind of interested about this one is, where does the center form? The more I look at it, the center's forming south of where all these models are trying to pick up on it. So I think this westward trend we're seeing is probably going to continue. And right now, just based on the ridge of high pressure, which is building north of it, this really looks like it's heading towards the Gulf of Mexico at some point over the next week or so. Let's look at those steering currents. The main steering current right now is by far this giant ridge of high pressure over the middle of the Atlantic. And then we've got this trough, which is what's probably going to grab this thing if it makes it there. It's going to get sucked up into that trough. But what I want you to watch is that high pressure system. It is basically building west as the system develops in the middle of the Atlantic. So you could see over time, we're going to go, this is the Thursday. Let me go to Friday. I'm going to go to Friday afternoon. You could see this ridge is pretty well intact. I mean, it keeps whatever's down here is going to be moving off in this direction and then trying to churn up in here long range, depending on what happens to this trough. You can see there's our first system maybe getting sucked up into that trough. You can see there's basically a crossroads there. That thing is either going to get picked up by the trough or it's just going to weaken and move off to the west. Some of the global models are hinting at that. We'll go into time. We'll go into the weekend. You can see that trough is still hanging out over the southeast. Look at the ridge, though, building over the northern Bahamas. This is probably good news for the Carolinas because with that ridge so strong there, it's very unlikely this system is going to do one of these or come up here. It's probably going to get into the Gulf, west side of Florida. But it just depends on where it forms. I mean, this thing could be so far south that it follows basically the first disturbance. It could definitely do that. I think that's a potential that we have to see. Now, we'll go through the weekend. There's our ridge holding steady. You can see that ridge is going to be the main driving force for any systems that develop out there. So it's likely going to see the Gulf Coast looks to me right now to be probably the most probable location we're going to see both of these systems go. And again, this is all the way out to Saturday night into Sunday. You kind of see the steering currents there. So, you know, I basically think all of these are just going to keep chugging to the west. They're not in a big hurry to develop. They're all probably going to be doing something like this. Now, this one will have the potential to curve out here or do that. But right now, it looks like the first two systems at least are heading to the west. So until we get a system to form, there's really nothing to get too concerned about. We're just in that mode right now where we need to pay attention to these systems over the next week or so. Really 5 to 7 days. The first system will be in the Gulf of Mexico or near there sometime this weekend. The other system, we're talking the middle, maybe early to middle of next week, depending on how fast it moves and where it develops. And again, until we get a low-level center and this thing's formed, there's really nowhere we know it's going yet. We just got a general idea based on that ridge of high pressure to the north and this heading into the Gulf. And I will caution you, long range, even all these getting into the Gulf, probably mixing with that trough means probably some heavy rain potential in the southeast. So at the very least, that moisture from these systems could have an indirect impact on the Carolinas somewhere down the road.